Papa Dom, what do you think is in business?
HMRC saying you're a customer.
What is it that goes wrong with it?
How can you be a customer of somebody who's an enforcement agency to collect cash off you? Customer implies customer care. They don't give a damn.
Why don't you trust government? What do they do to you?
I've never gone further rationalising, except I don't trust them. I've met the ones that are devious. So why would I trust them?
You believe, I think correctly, that universities are pretty much a waste of time.
Well, he believes that unless you're doing something to help you get somewhere, what's the point? You're just getting in debt.
And getting bad habits, in my book.
You're alluding to some of my habits, Bob. I have many. I would never describe you as someone who's money-driven, even though you are. It's like it's an uncomfortable truth. Would you say you love your job and you love what you do?
I don't love it. I enjoy it.
The following podcast is of none other than Richard Oury, senior partner of Oury Clark, my father, and the original Mr. Business Without Bullshit. We recorded this episode some time back, and it was the final time my sister, Juliette Muir, appeared on the podcast before she died of cancer on the 7th of June, 2023. Richard has had a wide career, from running and building the family business to acting as a chairman of a FTSE quoted company to being an entrepreneur in wine, music, cosmetics, food manufacturing, hedge funds, and more, not least all of the clients he has worked with over the years. And he has almost lost everything when a client tried to blame him for all their fraudulent activities in the early 1980s, an experience that deeply changed him as he left 4 children and my mother alone for a year while he successfully defended himself with every penny he had. A dyslexic mind that I inherited with a deeply independent mindset rooted in our Huguenot history of our name, Oury. Richard has always thought differently and talked straight. Revered by his client base for his lateral thinking and his deep skill as an accountant and tax advisor, and he was trained before calculators, so he is one himself, and of course his good humour. He has grown Oury Clark from a tiny firm in Slough to a unique and top 50 professional firm in the UK, and for me and many others who have worked with him, taught us so much about business, professionalism, and what it is to be a man. But more than anything, I know people respect him because he is a successful businessman, but he is also deeply kind and extremely generous with his money to all those he encounters. He believes you should enjoy life and spend your money from a position of sense and discipline. I was honored to record this, and while my sister was extremely sick with cancer at the time and died only a few months later, it is a joy to bring her back to life once more in this interview. I hope you enjoy it. Hello and welcome to Business Without Bullshit. I am Andy Oury, and alongside me is my co-host Juliette Oury. And
Good afternoon.
Indeed. And today we are joined by none other than Richard Anthony Oury, our father, senior partner at Oury Clark, all-round top man and wise old bugger. How are you doing, Pop?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. Just terrified of what you're going to do to me.
Yeah, excellent. That's
It's
exactly
all right,
the right state to be in. So we're going to start with some quick-fire questions. Let's get to know you a little bit better, for those of us who don't know you. And this we're going to ask you a few questions, 5 seconds or so per answer. We're not going to interrupt. We might interrupt. DQ. Oh, Antonio is our producer today. Big up, Antonio. Antonio, please cue the music. Okay, Pop, here we go. First question, Juliette.
What was your first job?
Working at Oury Clark, but actually it was Walter H. Oury & Co., 1959.
1959.
I left school in July. My father had me out of my first jobs in August and full-time on the 1st of September.
No paper round before then?
No.
I just watched Witness for the Prosecution, which is 1958, which was anyway. So that's a amazing film. What was your worst job? Well, there's only one to choose.
I haven't had a worse job. I've been very lucky.
Very good.
Favourite subject at school?
Geography.
Ah, was it? What's your special skill?
I don't know that I have a special skill. Somebody might say, when you make me think about it, is lateral thinking. You say I'm a problem solver. It's that sort of, I had to learn to turn problems upside down, and quite often you can solve them.
Yeah, I would say you're a brilliant lateral thinker. Indeed, as David Truscott, a former accountant of the OC, put an email to me the other day, and I've heard many other people say the same, including Amy. You are the finest accountant they've ever met. I mean, I'm not sure if it's an insult or a compliment.
You mean the most boring bastard?
I actually don't think. I think the people who are giving the compliments know what it really an accountant is. People think an accountant's all numbers, but they know that a true accountant it's more than numbers. It's advice. So I think you do have a special skill for it. I think you really do.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I had this conversation with my father sitting in a car outside Framlingham College, a prison camp if ever there was one, when I was
This
about
was your
15.
secondary school.
Yeah, public school. And I was about 15, and he came and said, well, we've got to decide what you're going to do. I was about to take O-level. What do you want to be? So I said, I think I'd like to be a chef. Oh, he said, you wouldn't like that. You don't like the heat. It's going to get up to 110 degrees in the kitchen in the summer in London. I went, I wouldn't do that. Oh, all right, then. What's next? And I thought, I'll be a farmer. Sorry, son, I'm going to only buy you a farm, so I can't be doing that. So I thought, I know, I'll get him. So I said, I think I'll be an actuary, which wasn't a sort of crazy suggestion at my age because I knew the family had been actuaries, or I knew what they were because they were very involved in the Norwich Union. So I thought that'll get it.
An actuary is a valuer, isn't it? Or something?
They work out risk. They're very boring mathematicians, actually. But I was quite fancy the idea. It was also winding my dad up a bit at the time. And he looked and I thought, gotcha. Now we'll see what happens with it. And then he looked at me and he said, do you know how long it takes to qualify as an actuary? So I said, no, Dad, I don't know. 10 years, he said. Bear in mind, I'm 15. He said, I'd be an accountant. It only takes 5. So that
You
was
were
that.
15 at the time.
Yeah.
Shit, you had
You
to
grew up
decide
fast back
what to
then.
do.
You know, baby, 4 kids, boom.
I know because he started work at 17. He allowed me to stay at school for a year with no curriculum. I could study what I liked.
What did you study?
Wait. He gave you a gap year. He gave you a gap year.
No, he didn't give me a gap year.
He
He left me. He said, "You're not bothering with A-levels. It doesn't do any good. It doesn't shorten the process."
It didn't
But you
back
can
there.
start. You're too young to start work. In my mind, you know, that was his position. So I'd leave you at school for another year, but you can study what you like. I had a great time. I had to take a car engine apart and how to make an atom bomb. And just I'd go and do the maths I liked, the geography I liked, the history I liked. I just was a thoroughgoing nuisance to all the masters.
Both Andy and I have our eyes on stalks, having
I have so
never
many
been
questions.
allowed a gap year.
No, I think
It wasn't
also
a gap year.
I find
I'll
the
tell you,
school-
Framlingham was not a place you went back to voluntarily.
But
It was
the school allowed
brutal.
that kind of thing back then, did it?
Well, he persuaded them to. I think they needed the money. I mean, they ran it on Tuppence,
And you then got to choose what classes you wanted to do
basically,
or not.
yeah.
But why did he not just say...
I didn't do maths. I did. I think I did a bit of calculus and a bit of geometry and trigonometry or something like that. That was it. Didn't bother with anything else. Bit of geography.
But why not? That's a very interesting. Your dad made you do that. Why not just? It's not gonna. He's saying at 16 to be an accountant. Nowadays, you've got to go to
To
university.
start work, I was too young. He said, you're too young to start work. You have another year.
15.
Yeah.
And I was probably young for my age at the time. And it was good. I read a lot in the school library. I would have never read just Capital or Dostoevsky or any of those guys of Tolstoy, War and Peace, the whole bloody lot. You know, I was reading them when I was at a good age to read them. I was sort of 16, coming on 17. It was great. And I had time to do it.
That's very fascinating because there's a whole school of thought. That's what the Montessori school of thought is, that humans love to learn and we do it when we're young. And the problem is you start forcing information on them. We don't like it. We don't want to learn anymore. And Montessori tries to, that's the theory of Montessori. But that's basically what they did to you. They were force feeding and then they said, okay, do what you want. And suddenly things become interesting again. It's fascinating.
But it wasn't a gap year, Julie.
Just to be clear,
Framlingham was about survival.
just to be clear, our father was a very generous man and gave us many good times. But when it came to the conversation of gap year, he raised one of his inevitable eyebrows at us and said, "Don't think so. Get on with your life." Indeed, you believe, I think correctly, academically, that universities are pretty much a waste of time. I think that's pretty fair. I think unless you're doing medicine or something. I did engineering, but I can't tell you any of it.
Well, he believes that unless you're doing something to help you get somewhere, what's the point? You're just getting in debt.
Yeah.
And getting bad habits, in my book.
You
Drinking.
you alluding to some of my habits?
No.
I have many.
But we have the argument with our own staff of saying if they qualify, get on and take the next exam quickly if you can. If you're in the discipline of working and studying, it's far easier than coming back to it.
Yeah.
Definitely
if you can discipline yourself to get through all that.
Well,
What shall I say? Part of the idea getting qualified, but you get there, you're young, and you've done it. Whereas otherwise, you've had playtime, and then you've got to go back to work. No, it doesn't work easily.
I think exams are, given that a lot of people have this same recurring dream that I have, now I've asked lots of people, which is that, one of my anxiety dreams is I'm in a dream and I've got an exam tomorrow and I didn't know I had it and I haven't done any studying. And it's a really stressful dream. And then you wake up and I still, honestly, what's crazy, when I have it very strongly, it hasn't happened in a while. I've got bigger anxieties these days. But, I wake up and it will take me about an hour to go through in my mind that I did pass my university. I have done my exams. I don't, honestly, I'll be drinking the tea with this oh my God. And this is a very common dream. And it just shows how hard exams are. I mean, they're a very grueling process. So as you say, get it done. Because once you're not doing them, you won't want to do them again.
That's my whole attitude.
Yeah.
So it's too tough.
So what did your parents want you to be?
Well, my mother just was long for the beer, That's not a good description of her, but wasn't going to interfere. And she was working in the firm anyway. She'd helped found the damn thing. My father went off and his father bought him a share in a practice, but he married my mother very soon afterwards in 1936, and they moved locally. And she became very much, kept the books and all of that. When they went on their own in just 1st January 41, she was there. She was the secretary bookkeeper, did the bills, was the administrator.
I thought it was 35 they went off on their own.
In 35, they bought the practice. But it was a partnership.
So Major Reed was still in it till 41.
Yeah.
Right. I've got my history. It might be wrong.
No, the row was in 1940. Father went off to Bury, your grandfather, who died in December 40. And he went off through, it was the same thing. He went off through the Blitz, through London. I think he found it fascinating, all through the trains to the underground in the middle, when the Blitz was still going on. Came back to the office after about a week sorting out his father's affairs and go to the funeral and all of that stuff.
Why? Where was he born? Where was
he was Norwich, and I was born in Slough. So he went off to do all of that stuff. And when he came back, the office hadn't been opened and the guy had been down the pub for a week.
During the war.
And he had a row with the partner, and the partner said, if you can take your clients by the end of December, this is like middle of December, you can go, we'll bust the partnership, thinking he couldn't do it. Because it's the middle of, worst period of the war. He's got to find an office, a telephone, we'll have it all done in a fortnight. And he managed to do it.
That's when Slough comes into the picture. Nobody predicted Slough.
No, well, it's exactly because he managed to get an office in Slough from a local firm that was estate agents, really nice family firm that's been there for years. It's been taken over and disappeared, but they had some rooms over their own shop in the high street. It was number 18. It's been renumbered to 62. It's still there. And he took the rooms over the shop, over the estate agents. And then he was in the Observer Corps, which was a unit that tracked aircraft and was a major influence in the Battle of Britain.
Yeah, because people won't realise, but accountancy, during a war, they still want their tax. So they like us accountants. So it's a reserved occupation.
Yeah, so you didn't get called up. you did civil defence. He was in the Observer Corps, which meant you were up every night sitting on Windsor Castle watching the aircraft coming over and
Well,
identifying
he had to
them.
predict, whether it was an enemy plane or friendly, no?
Absolutely. They were really trained. I mean,
So he was working through the night and then going to work
shift
in
as
the
well,
day.
yeah. They were doing double shift.
It's a war. You do what you have to do.
And amazing, they had all these slides and they used to flash them. You know, you'd get a 1 second flash or whatever it is, 2 second flash, and they'd have to identify them from any angle. And they got so good at that, they were excellent. And then they learnt the engine noises. And I remember him telling me that there was planes coming in to land at Northolt, which I think was a bomber base, coming back from a raid. And they could hear that there was an ME-110 Messerschmitt night fighter mixed up with them, because they used to wait until the landing lights were put on, and then they'd shoot them down just as they thought they were home. And they would listen, and they'd have to ring up Northolt and say, "You've got a bandit among the ones coming in, warn them.
Wow.
Don't put your lights on yet. You know, so we can sort it out." But it was messy. But they were really good at it. He did it for quite a while after the war. It was an essential because radar was there, but infancy.
Well, also it's a dot. I mean, early radar, it was even worse than a dot.
Yeah, they used to be able to track. They had tracking tables, so they could, if it was line of sight, they could see them and measure the altitude, and then report back. So we got 40 of them at 50,000, 5,000 feet or whatever it was. Angels 5.
I always think radar's one of those good examples that we're not the most brilliant island, but we are quite innovative, and there's various things you can point it to that changed the war, changed our history.
Funnily enough, the Observer Corps was the same as radar. Nobody had such an in-depth defence system.
Really?
Our air defence system was miles ahead.
I've just learned too, the CIA was based on the British Special Secret Service, who wound the Americans up for a few years saying, you need one of these. And apparently when it started, it was this terribly British thing with everyone smoking pipes in America and tweed jackets, and they're like, oh, jolly good, because that's how the British do it. So I sit around reading newspapers, having a bit of a pipe, until they went CIA crazy, like, we're going to change the world, or whatever. It's like fascinating. We're going to come back. At the end, we'll do more in-depth interview, because it'd be nice to chat a little bit more about this. So now this question is going to amuse me. I know you're aware of the existence of karaoke. Have you ever done karaoke, Pop?
No.
Do you have a song? If you had to sing a
Yes, a
song.
marching band or something.
No.
Is there any song you could sing? Any lyrics of any song?
A musical?
No.
Opera?
No.
If you had to listen to music, what do you listen to?
What do I listen to? It floats about. I might listen to Offenbach because it's light opera. I quite like light opera because I don't have to concentrate too much.
But you loved to dance when you were young. Love to dance means you like rhythm. So you must have been, you like Buddy Holly. That's who you like. And you could probably sing a Buddy Holly song, surely. Every day.
Yeah, but that'd be it.
Longer. Yeah, but that's okay. I found a song.
That's all you need.
It's a great song too.
I actually think he'd be better on the marching bands, but we'll move on.
There's not many lyrics though, is there? I like that's someone gave the answer of what's their karaoke song. So I always do tequila, and you said, "What's that?" It's like, do you know how many lyrics are in tequila? How many lyrics? One word, tequila. You have to say it every 30 seconds. Tequila. That's it. I was like, okay, that's a good answer.
It's quite funny. I mean,
I like that.
I spent a period buying records because I thought I ought to understand classical music, and that went on for about several years.
Down the Slough record shop on the Farnham Road.
Various places, and in
How old
Jones
were you?
Cross. I think
When
I did.
we were little. Don't you remember
very
going
small.
into Slough Record Centre?
I remember we had the record player. I remember it in the big room. And I remember my first record was from my godmother, The Snowmen, Hokey Cokey. And the second
was
vinyl I
Adamant.
still have, and is now my kid's favourite song, Nick Kershaw, I Won't Let the Sun Go Down on Me.
Like it.
Oh, my kids love it. I found the old 45. So I remember the record player. I remember the wooden box. You used to buy vinyl for it, did you?
Yeah. And then we'd go down and I went through everything, eventually got to things like Janacek and decided I couldn't stand them. More remote classical people, that it's just not my scene. But it's part of these things, history, aren't they? My aunt, my father's sister, she used to play me when I'd come home, be taken out of Framlingham or somewhere, have to go and visit Granny. But they play, music on there, and it would be the most highbrow classical. Can't you hear the birds tweeting? And I'm like, I just want a cup of tea and get out of here.
You liked rock
so
and
there were a
roll,
lot
though.
of.
You liked rock and roll. You. It is important to remember, though, in the UK, people think that it was all the swinging '60s and everything. That was actually a very contained movement in the King's Road, and it was in certain parts of San Francisco. It wasn't sort of a global.
Certain parts of South Kent. I used to go
South
to the
Kent.
De Vere Hotel.
Well, there we go. You used to love rock
I used
and
to
roll.
dance underneath. I'd listen to the band. I went to dance.
But you've got to listen to the band
And
to dance.
they'd have all the latest stuff.
Yeah.
No, there was no band. It was just records. It was but it was the latest dance crazes and things in this club in a basement in a hotel.
How did you learn the dance crazes? You just learned them from each other.
Oh yeah. You'd watch what's going on. It's the Madison. Oh, how'd you do that? And twisting was just learning from people.
Twisting's cool. Yeah, that's really fascinating. What was your first vinyl?
Adam and Stand and Deliver.
Was it?
Yeah.
That was my other favourite song. Yeah.
That's because you and I brought them together.
I wonder
guess so.
whether it's something to do with the fact that there was virtually no portable music when I was young.
Oh, to the technology is huge. If you look at the generation it's the invention of the Walkman, of which you have an original one. The original Sony Walkman this man here has, available at £2,000. But you have an original Walkman because actually we share this, although you might not agree with it. I'm a gadget freak. You love technology. You say I'm a Luddite sometimes, but that's just because it's fucking hard to keep up, but you love tech. You've always had the latest gadgets. You had an original car phone.
Yeah.
You found the manual the other day with the map of coverage, which was basically South Ken and Slough. They decided that somewhere between South Ken and Slough was where all the rich people were.
Well, if you turned out of Egypt Lane and you turned right, it stayed on. If you turned left, it turned off.
Did it?
Yeah.
It was literally this triangle drawn. It was just the money, where the money is.
Well, they had to put all the masts in. It was like chargers for electric cars. You have to think of it that way, that they set it up with a number of masts. But it was taking them time to put more and more masts in.
And Traffic Master, you had one of the first traffic systems.
Which was a bit like Google Traffic.
Well, you see, I love gadgets and I remember them. I remember when you used to get the new Mercedes, I'd just go and sit in the car for like half an hour, just press all the buttons, I remember you going, you need to get in my car and press the buttons. I'd be like... You see, but I guess that's, I don't know.
A male thing.
A male thing. Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
This will be an interesting one you could ask.
Well, indeed. This is a very controversial
Very
topic.
controversial.
For
Brace yourselves.
family office dogs. Are they business, Dad, or are they bullshit?
I know the answer.
If I said it generally, I'd say bullshit. If you've got a dog, I don't know, you can caveat it a bit, but I think if you let everybody bring their dog in, you'd get no work done. They'd be all barking around the bloody house. It'd be a nightmare. Perhaps the odd one, like a mascot in a regiment.
That's very kind of you, Pop. Because
I don't mind. I think he's a nice dog. He's quiet.
He's quiet.
If you get some yappy little dog in there, or somebody nips your heels, which happened to me when I went to Brian the other day, my brother, out comes this little dog and nips me sharply around the heels, and I wanted to kill it.
They're bad.
If I hadn't been there, I'd have kicked it. Teach it a bloody lesson, come out and stick his teeth in me.
I have to say, when I'm really stressed, they're bullshit because they're distraction. He wants to go out, but it's more troublesome than winter because you have to open the door for them constantly. So I've been a bit exhausted with it, but underneath it, I think they bring a lot of happiness to people.
It's known to be therapeutic. I have had to referee dog matches in client sites, which is mildly amusing.
A dog match?
Yeah, because one of the original tech companies who was one of the leading lights on having dogs, I learned as they allowed everyone to bring their dogs and everyone decided to get a dog when they started working there. They had a complete nightmare because they ended up with dog fights, dog shits, dog everything.
It depends on the dog. And actually, interestingly, we've had a few, because staff sometimes ask me, but people are quite honest about it. I mean, we've got amazing staff, so that'll be why, because lots of them will say, I'd love to bring my dog in, and I'll feel bad. And then they'll immediately follow up by saying, I can't. They're a total nightmare. They're not like Romeo. They just cause chaos. It would be a nightmare. He's really sweet. And I think that's a lot to do with the breed, not my training. Border Terriers are just.
Well, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, 100%. My training's almost no. So this next question, we know the answer because Have you ever been fired? No, but it's not over yet, Prof, you know. If there's one fear I know my father has, is us turning around and, sorry, Dada, it's time. Is that fair? Do you is it
Have you never been fired? I mean, you have had multiple jobs outside of Oury Clark.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah. You haven't just done Oury Clark. You have done other things.
Yeah, technically, I would say, good question. Let's say I didn't win at a boardroom once. There was a putsch. And they got together 3 or 4 of the directors to get rid of me. All the non-executives voted for me, but they got 4 of the executives to put a resolution to remove me.
Crabtree.
Yeah, and then they went ping about 2 years
Why?
later. Why? Because I said they were at it in terms of I wasn't prepared to publish the results.
I think this is
And
something...
they cut me out, and all the non-execs resigned as well,
Didn't they?
except one.
I think this is something...
And he wished he had.
we should discuss further with you as we go through this conversation is, you know, you and I struggle to say this without sounding like I'm just trying to, you know, big up my dad or something. You have incredible integrity as a person, you know, an integrity from an older world, I would almost say, that we've almost forgotten. But I mean, it is quite deeply connected to, I guess, you know, your upbringing and things, but we should come back to that.
Well, Dad's philosophy is your word is your bond.
Yeah, that was my father's philosophy.
That
And that's
you
probably
have.
a very Huguenot philosophy. You know, it's about trust, isn't it? You learn the very few people you can trust. So you need to be trustworthy. Because you see the bad side of you can't trust people.
Did your father talk about the Huguenots?
Yeah.
Oh, he did.
Oh, yeah.
He felt he was quite a Huguenot. And so therefore...
Well, I told you, he told me I couldn't marry a Catholic. That subject used to come up regularly.
Wow.
I'd get thrown out if I did. No mercy on that subject.
And this is a subject that's disappeared for our generation. Is you have to, if you look at it, Britain is a Protestant Ireland with a capital P. You know, I mean, you look back over the hundreds of years. It's, you know, there's been times of the Catholics and all of that, but ultimately, you know, it's a huge fight, and it was a big deal. And us with the Dutch or whatever, we're the Protestant,
Yeah.
you know, countries basically.
Well, Luther and all that. It's
Luther.
like you go to Iceland, it's Protestant.
And the Huguenots were French Protestant, and France was mostly Catholic, was it? That's
Yeah.
the point. So they were persecuted.
Well, there was wars, there were religious wars between the Protestants and the Catholics in France. And they were settled by, I think it was Henry IV or something of France, drew up a treaty of Nantes where they said we'll forget fighting about it, just get on with your life. And then Louis XIV, about 100 years later, revoked the Edict of Nantes and encouraged everybody to attack the Protestants and basically say, you either convert or you get out of this country. We're going to be 100% Catholic.
So we left.
We left. Yeah, it was terrible, actually, because you had a lot of people...
It's okay, we can pause or whatever.
Sorry, a lot of people left the country. We ended up, I believe our ancestors ended up in Nice, which at that time was part of the Kingdom of Savoy, you know, it was Italian. But somehow, and I'm not sure how, you know...
We ended up here.
Well, I know how that happened, according to the records we've got, is that Antonio Oury, living in Nice got captured by Napoleon, but Napoleon had religious freedom. He got rid of all that nonsense.
Yeah, he was quite cool on some levels.
So he joined Napoleon's army, and he was an officer in Napoleon's army, got captured, brought to London, and he must have been captured after 1800 because I noticed that one of his children was born in Nice in about 1801.
Is this Antonio Oury, who was the violin player?
No, that's his son.
Ah, second only
Actually,
to
I'm getting it wrong. I
Paganini.
think it was Antonio was his son. You're right. It's Jacques. I can show you that.
I remember Antonio being the violin
Jacques
player.
was Dag, and he got paroled in London, and he married an Englishwoman in London because he was paroled officer. Yeah, and he became a music teacher because he had to earn a dance teacher. So obviously it was music in the family. And Antonio's son became second only under Paganini, as you say. There's a clipping about it.
I found in Eton Library.
Yeah. So Jack then had children, and they went down, and that's how we came about. You know, the whole tree's there.
It's funny, yeah, the music thing is, so what's that? Our great
I think it's 6 times back. I worked it out. I think I was sitting talking to, who was I talking to? Sam or somebody. I sat down.
No,
and
that doesn't sound so good. My great-great-great-great-grandfather was second only to Packer.
No, it's your great. No, it's your great uncle.
Oh, bollocks. That's not going to go on the press release. I think we should carry on in this vibe. So we'll do that question, and then I think we should ask these 3, because I think these are all quite personal. This is a very interesting discussion, certainly for the Ouries in the room.
So, Dad, what is your vice?
My vice?
I know what that is. What did it used to be, at least?
I guess it's red wine, isn't it? You know,
Eating too much food.
Food
and
you
booze.
put first, food and wine.
Yeah.
Good food and booze.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's a vice, except that I consume too much of it at times. Probably not booze nowadays. I'm much control, but food, I'd love to cut back on it.
You love food, and I mean,
But I think it runs in the family, whether it's the French thing. Because my father loved food. He would go to the Dorchester, Caprice and places which were really good restaurants for the time. They were some of the best food, and he would love that. And he was enjoying good food. And his father, he told me, was very much
into
Was
food.
it crazy money in the old days?
No. That's the question, isn't it? That wasn't cheap, but it was
Affordable.
affordable. Yeah.
Could anyone go there?
Yeah. Well, you think father's an accountant from Slough, he's going to the Dorchester.
I'm still in shock.
One of the reasons you go there also was, I think, that they had a 10 and sixpence meal or something. It was control over what you could charge. And the value was just, outstanding.
Why didn't
Really
everyone
good
go
food.
then?
Well, they couldn't afford 10 and sixpence, everybody, but he would spend 10 and sixpence.
£10 and 6
Half a
pence.
guinea.
That's not
half a guinea, if you know what a guinea is. The
guinea
guinea's
is-
£1 and 1 shilling, so it's 1.10.
Quite a lot of money.
Well, it's 1.05 actually, a guinea.
Yeah, there's a great. You can Google a website to work it out. I mean, genetically, my genome says that I'm predisposed to be overweight, and I think we all, everyone's
How did you find that out?
You do 23andMe, and I think as a family, most people, to be honest, are predisposed to be a bit overweight because actually the body should be a bit overweight. It's not very good. You can live longer if you strip it right back, but. So it's a bit like, why do you have really fat people? You have really fat people because there used to be in history famines, proper famines, and there wouldn't be any food for a year. Yeah, and you needed some fat fuckers to live. And that's why you get in all animal types, you'll get ones that are really fat. So when you're looking at someone who's massively overweight and they're not just an American who eats too much fast food, or that sort of attitude, they're just big, like Hugh, they're just big people. It's very hard for them. That's because their genetics are just telling them that that's how they should be, So I think being predisposed to be overweight is going to make you more hungry. I mean, I'd be interested in this. I mean, I am actually a glutton. I worked out. I like it all. I like the shit. I like the good stuff. I used to like school food. I like it all. Would you share that, or you only like?
Well, not the school food. Where I went, you wouldn't like the school food.
It was pretty bad when I went, but I used to eat
Well,
other
bad.
people's.
Like twice we had chips, and twice there were riots, and I mean fights, not messing about fights.
Wow.
Because we just had not seen chips.
It's not
twice they
expensive to
served
make chips.
I tell you, the food, they used to water the bread. People don't believe it. They used to get sandwich loaves, leave them in the pantry for at least 2 weeks so they were rock hard, and then pour water on them and cut them because you didn't want to eat much of it.
Because they're running on a
You
tight
put
budget.
fresh bread out,
Boom,
gone.
You're dealing with
You
young
put out
men.
stale bread that's been watered, you got to be hungry to eat it.
Wow.
Well, I left school at 10 stone,
Yeah.
17 fully grown.
100 fags a day.
Not quite. I was 20. That's probably what's enabled me not to stand the food being so bad, but it was awful.
Well, the film I watched in 1958, I was looking up when did smoking, in 1958 was one of the peaks. 80% of male men smoked. 80%.
Yeah, I believe
We
it.
were one of the highest in the world, by the way, out of interest. Lots of other countries didn't smoke as heavily as
When
us.
I started working in Slough, we had 5 of us guys in one room and we all smoked
All day.
all day. It was like blue.
I know they've got this club scene
When
in it.
we started the law firm, you got to bet we all smoked.
Did you?
all smoked. I smoked at court, in the police stations, on the train.
You smoked on the train?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were permitted on train, in the court. They then created a
Isn't that
smoking area.
Well, I used to smoke on aircraft. You could smoke on airplanes.
That bit I sort of remember, but now when you sort of say, can you imagine, people would go ape shit if you lit a cigarette, not because it's illegal, because oh my lungs, I'm going to die.
I know.
But I was thinking about this a lot. We grew up burning stuff in fires, in caves, in huts. We're actually quite well adapted to deal with quite a lot of
What
smoke.
we're not adapted, there've been a couple of documentaries being shown on TV at the moment about the 1952 smogs, or they were 53, 54.
Pea supers, the sulfur.
Those sulfur ones, and they were not nice, and a lot of people died.
Yeah.
Where did they come from? From the matches?
No, from the smoke. You had an inversion over London. Everybody was burning coal to keep warm.
And coal.
You think of all the
quite
chimneys
noxious.
in these streets, all belching out smoke. It wasn't smokeless fuel. It was proper coal. So that was pouring out. Plus, you've got steam trains, factories, people smoking, and you created this yellow muck, and it killed a load of people. And I hadn't seen the stats. They showed some, and the bronchitis rate went through the roof and was killing a lot of people, which is what happened to my father, or your grandfather. He was told after the second winter or third winter he had bronchitis. They said, you must leave Slough and go and live in Gerrards Cross. It's 300 feet high and you'll miss the smog. It'll kill you.
Why the posh people ended up in Gerrards Cross, probably, because it's on a hill.
Yeah. Well, at that time, it was like, get out of here. It's going to kill you. Because you can imagine the power station in Slough, the trains roaring in and out, the amount of smoke that was. If you went to London when I started work, people used to put greaseproof paper around their sleeves, around their cuffs, to stop the coal getting on them. Because as soon as you touched the train, it was covered in coal dust. It was filthy. You would arrive black. So they used to then take the greaseproof paper off or whatever it was, and their cuffs were okay. Otherwise, they'd get there with a white shirt and it was black. It was really,
it's just mind-blowing.
Pollution was just horrendous. I remember crossing the road in Slough when the main high street was the main A4 from Bath. Everything went through it. There was no other road to get to London. And all the trucks were diesel, and they were all down at 20-mile-an-hour limits and whatever, but they used to stagger off the traffic lights, belching diesel fumes. You'd hold your breath to cross the road.
Yeah, it's all right if there's a breeze, isn't there? I mean, a lot of it's weather dependent, so that's why you get the PC.
Well, not if you're crossing the road. They'd start up as you cross the road, and the cloud comes straight at you.
Yeah.
It was... it was where the way the world was, wasn't it? We didn't know any better at the time. And science only worked it out. The documentary on the smog said they never actually told anybody in the first year. They didn't say health warning, red zone, all the stuff we now would do.
Popper, I want you to talk us through your jobs that you've had, because whilst you've been an accountant and run this place and built it and built it and built it, you've had lots of jobs along the side, which, as far as I'm concerned, are full-time jobs.
No, I mean, some of them were just ventures, weren't they?
Is this you trying to escape the firm, Pop? Is this you trying to sort of get out?
Oh, you're very near the edge with that remark. No, I wanted to be free of my brother financially. I wanted to create something that was mine.
Yes, your relationship with your brother is complicated. It leads me to quite a deep question, which was, why were you so passionate about your children joining the business?
Oh, it wasn't the business was a problem. I got on well with my father and enjoyed it all. And it was a good business.
Right.
Yeah, and I've built it since then, don't forget. You were around, but when did 1981, you were only 3 when I split with them December 80.
Yeah.
You were very young. So you were young kids. So by the time you were older, joining the business was fine because it was a business that was doing well.
What was your father like?
Straight as a die. Quite. What was father like? Protestant. Low church, if you know what that means.
No idea.
Plain table,
Right.
wooden cross. No, because he came from East Anglia, which is a sort of Puritan background.
Right.
Was he religious?
Went to church every Sunday.
Blimey.
Would you pray? Would you say grace?
No, but I think he never talked about religion, but he would go to church every Sunday. He was a church warden. He never talk about it.
And then the bit I like is you get them all back from the church and give them champagne cocktails. So that's when I know he's a true Oury.
That was a different.
But the Huguenot thing was important to him. He'd talk to you about it, would he?
Yeah, that we are Huguenots. I didn't sort of imagine that or do it by research. It was, definitely talked about. We're Huguenots. Hard work, Protestant. Don't trust government.
They're very Jewish, in my view. And in a lot of the philosophy, it's got a very an overlap with the sort of Jews' philosophy.
Well, you might as well say that, Christians overlap with Jews, which they do because of the Ten Commandments.
Yeah. No, but there's this sort of hard work, determination. I mean, certainly, it's a...
But is it because the Huguenots are persecuted?
Yes.
And the Jews have been persecuted, which is why they sheltered the Jews in the war, the Huguenots out
of sympathy, I didn't
in
realize.
the Massif Central, because they saw them as themselves, what they'd gone through.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, it's like Bosnia and places where there's been ethnic cleansing. It will take years and generations before it'll disappear.
Yeah, it's very hard to fix. It's the problem in Jamaica, like Sprague has said to me. I was like, can't you just guys stop fucking killing each other? And he said, okay, well, imagine my brother killed your dad and, and your sister killed. And, he says, just imagine there's just murder going back and forward and your wife was murdered by my sister.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it now? And I'm like, I'll fucking kill them all, Do you remember your grandfather?
My maternal grandfather, yeah.
Your paternal was dead, was he?
Yeah. He died in 1940.
In the war?
What I said, he's the one father went to bury in the Blitz in December 40.
How did he die? Do you know?
He had cancer.
Okay. And then your maternal grandfather, what was he like?
Lovely guy. He died of a heart attack. He had angina and things in days where they didn't operate on your heart. But he was he'd had a hard time really because he'd come from sort of quite well off middle class, and he ended up, let's say, treasurer of Clapham or something, which was a nice regular job in those days when Britain was wealthy or whatever. And then the slump came, the big depression, and he was thrown out of work, and he struggled to get a sort of junior treasurer clerk position, and he got one in Maidstone. He just couldn't get work. And they had quite a small semi-detached in fact, a very small semi-detached in Maidstone. I forgot what it was called, something road.
You've got a tremendous memory.
Something Hill Road, it'll come back to me, but it's...
I may have smoked a little too much wacky-backy, but I honestly, my level of detail is poor, really.
He was a lovely guy. I mean, there's pictures of him. You'll see he was in the war. He ended up in charge of all the special constables, and he was the superintendent or whatever. Got his Sam Brown and his things uniform, all dressed up and taking him through to a parade, because the special constables were big stuff in the war. Because a lot of the regular police had gone off, and they needed.
I don't even know what's a special constable. Do you know?
Well, a special constable is a sworn-in policeman, but it's like the TA, like the Territorial Army. He's a reservist.
He's a normal person.
Right.
He's there as he's got powers.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they get properly trained.
Extent. I mean, they can give out more in times of war or whatever.
No, I think in the war, up until recently, they were fully fledged, but they were part time. They rather like you get the Territorial Army; they're fully fledged soldiers. She knew how to cook cheap food, which is why I'm very unsympathetic.
Why she had the off time?
Because father's out of work, no money coming in the 20s.
Your father was?
No, her father.
In the 1929 crash?
Yeah. Thrown out of work, no money.
What was her father? Norwich Union?
No, he was the one who was in the local authority, treasurer, who ended up as a clerk earning a pittance.
Right.
So she learnt to cook.
That's why she was very careful with money.
Yeah.
Because she'd been broke.
Yeah, she'd seen it, when you've got nothing.
Well, Scotty said that to me, and he absolutely smashed it when he hung out with me on holiday. He said, "You've never been broke, Andy, have you?" And I was like, "No, I've never been broke." And he's like, "Changes you. I can tell you've never been broke because how you are with money, you don't, you stop liking spending it."
Yeah. Well, I think that's true because it makes people careful. It was like Geraldine, Mary's mother. She had to scrimp and save because they sent the kids to public school, and that on a National Health Surgeon's salary to send 3 kids to a decent public school was ripped all their money out. And she could cook on very little. You get scrag end and all these things, or,
eggnog.
Breast of lamb. I remember my mother's specialty was breast of lamb, which was, you can buy it now, but she would roll it and stuff it to make it go further. And most people wouldn't eat it now because it's pretty fat. But, if you're short of calories, it's great. Tastes brilliant.
Yeah, just get it crispy.
Yeah.
That's the trick. So you other jobs that you've had, we've talked a lot about Oury Clark, which was called Oury & Co. Your brother was in it.
Reed & Co.
Reed & Co.
It was Reed & Co. And then it was Walter H. Oury, chartered accountant. Walter H. Oury & Co. Then it became Oury & Co. And then it was split because when my brother and I had a disagreement and various events happened in 1980, we split it. Brian called it Nicholson's for God knows what reason, but I called it my half Clark because we decided you couldn't have 2 Ourys practicing within 6 miles of each other with the same name of firm without chaos. So we became Clark's, which was the name of a practice, very small, sole practitioner we'd bought in Maidenhead. So there was a reason to use the name because we had clients from that practice. And then later on, when we had some advice about marketing, they sort of said he put Oury back in it. And by that time, Brian had gone off to Gerrard's Cross, I think, or was not really that involved. So it didn't cause any confusion.
I love the fact people still ask us about who's Clark.
Yeah, I know. We get all sorts. Can I speak to Mr. Clark? Sales call. But we asked a question and we started to answer, which is you've always gone off and done other things. You've been involved in the wine trade. You got involved in Crabtree, a listed metal decorating company from Newcastle.
Yeah. Gateshead.
What others? Are there others?
Hedge Fund.
Norman.
Car deal at Gate Car Dealership.
Well, the second largest Ford dealership I was chairman of, and the largest contiguous Ford dealer, I think, in the world.
What's contiguous?
We'd have 5 dealerships all next to each other, and Fords hated it because it means you control a big area.
Why did you end up chairman of that? Were they clients?
Because I had a client who'd been kicked out of it who had about 27%. He was the son of the founder. And had been kicked out, and he was a client, and he said, "Oh, I've got this notice, and they're going to change the company from a PLC to a private limited." And I said, "So you can't transfer your shares, and you can block it because you got 27%." Because there was somebody who was circling around who was interested in picking up the company. So I said, "Let's block it." Because you don't want that to happen. It's the one good card you've got. You can sell your shares to anybody without the private company articles restricting it. So we went to the togging along to the board meeting and sat there, and they had a little vote. The board all sitting there to go private, and I just got up and said, "I demand a poll." So we demanded a poll, counted the votes, and we had 55%. So we'd won.
Oh, yeah, you had more. 25 would have been enough to block it.
We could have blocked it, but we had enough to win.
Right.
Outright, which meant they didn't control the board anymore.
Oh, fabulous.
And a look of terror on their face, which was quite good to behold.
Funny from a man who doesn't like polls.
But well, this is votes, isn't it?
Voting, yeah. Not as in the Polish, may I clarify.
But we then had a situation which we said, "We don't want to run this place, you're running it, but you're going to make money for the shareholders and stop messing around because you're the worst performing Ford group in the days of the Cortina, which was the biggest selling car.
Huge.
You know, why are you not making money? Get on and do something about it. And you've got all these valuable sites. What are you doing? And they said, we'll meet with you regularly. So we met them about 4 times that year, got absolutely nowhere. So I then posted a notice to them firing the whole board, which got quite exciting.
With your former client now almost in business with him, but you weren't a shareholder at this point.
No.
You never became a shareholder.
I don't think I did, no. I was doing a job for a client, which was like, let's get your money.
Yeah.
And the people I got involved, it's a long story, so I won't go there with all of it, why it happened, but there was a discontented widow shareholder, we'll say that, who hated the MD because he tried to buy the shares off her within a week of her husband's death. Never go and talk to a widow about buying something straight after the death. She took, she just, that was it. She would do anything to blow him away. So we then fired the board, kept the managing director who she wanted to kill because he was threatening he wanted £500,000. And this was years ago, so probably like 2 million now if we fired him. And we fired him, I think, for 20 grand or something about 3 weeks after we went in. We just got people in and said, hold on a minute, you've got your mistress over at this hotel in London. You've got a load of private cars which are nothing to do with Ford. You know, you're milking it here, milking it there, get out of here. But the problem was, I learned a lesson, don't get involved in a corrupt company, because the problem is if the board's corrupt, then everybody down to the lowest fitters nicking something.
Yeah, everyone's at it.
Everyone's at it because the culture's corrupt. But we managed to break it up in the end and get the property sold off and the money back to the shareholders.
Was this because of the shadow of Brian? You were always looking for stuff
That was
outside
it.
of
That
it?
was when I did the wine. That was 74. No, it was opportunity. I think one thing Father taught me was that, you know, take your opportunities. It's a bit like...
Wasn't he the man who turned down Coca-Cola, though, or something? Isn't
No, that's his client did.
Oh, his client turned down Coca-Cola. I tell that story wrong every time. Then.
Yeah, he turned down Coca-Cola because it would have made his inheritance tax bill too big.
Hilarious.
The guy, he the guy who brought Hoover to the UK. If you drive past the Hoover building, he was one of the 2 brothers that built that.
Wow. That was a client of your dad's?
Yeah.
So your dad was obviously pretty good. He had some pretty cool clients, even though he was a small business, which I now understand is because back then, in today's money, once you hit 200 grand, which I know is an awful lot of money for some people, but frankly, I could piss it up a wall in a weekend. But, you know, you got taxed to 98%. So you just reached a...
Was it? Well, yeah, 200 grand equivalent today.
Today, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's about 200 now. It's, I think I worked it out on an inflation, it's 180 or something, whatever. And a lot of money, but...
And then you get back taxed at 98%, so why would you work any harder?
Yeah, wow. But what is so opportunity comes along and you like to chase it?
Well, it's 2 things. It's happening to us today, is that when we started insolvency, you know, you need the circumstances to start it. There's a change in the law, so you say, okay, what are we going to do about it? If we're going to start in any other areas, you grab them. And I'm giving you bad examples, but a bit like I got a license. It is the classic example to be a discretionary fund manager from the Institute.
This all feels a bit more like professional services, though. You know, wine trading is like, you know, left at the traffic light.
Well,
it's like wine trading.
Well, it's a hedge fund. It's a hedge fund.
Label.
It's a hedge fund.
Yeah, it's still sort of, you just said you got to, but I get it, it's still out there.
But I got a license and then I've got to do something with it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So
What made you apply for a license there?
Because Father was right. When they banned, if you go back, a lot of accountants weren't qualified. A lot of people who did tax weren't qualified. And they started putting rules in and saying, we don't want to deal with these people. You know, there were various...
It was unregulated.
Unregulated. We don't want too much of this. So as soon as they start putting in a regulation about you need to be qualified to do an audit, for instance, you need to take it. I'm going to be saying to you, we need to do these listings for that very reason. When you can, do the thing, because the next thing is...
You mean get regulated to do AIM audits or whatever?
Yeah, because the next stage after the regulation being increased is that they'll ban anybody or make it impossible to join.
Yeah.
Like you'll have to have somebody who's got 10 years experience of doing them or something.
Yeah.
They always up the ante, which is what they did with the hedge fund license, and then I got one, but within 10 years it was, no, you can't have one anymore. Basically, you've got to take all these extra exams. That can happen, but grab it while it's there if you've got a chance to do something.
Because they can't destroy an industry when they come in with a regulation.
Correct.
They got 1,000 people out there, no one's regulated.
Yeah. And you're depriving people of their living, which is not very popular.
No.
So you've got it. All I'm saying is watch it when things are floating around and they suddenly say, solicitors have to have 20 years training to do probate. The next thing is you're stuffed.
Papa Dom, what do you think is bullshit in business?
HMRC saying you're a customer. I can't get over that.
It annoys me now you said it. It feels really weird.
It's rubbish.
Why though? What is it that is wrong with it?
How can you be a customer of somebody who's an enforcement agency to collect cash off you? You're not their customer. Customer implies customer care. They don't give a damn, whatever they say in their nonsense, because you get on the phone there and it's, sorry, our lines are all busy, or come back in a month's time, we might answer. What
are we then to the revenue?
People. We're just bods to get cash out of.
Yeah.
Why, as I say, put the high net worth individual unit, which shouldn't exist in my book. It should be by across the board. When it was districts, it was just who lived in the district. Now it's like, you're high net worth. We're going to put you up in Scunthorpe or somewhere horrible that's going to have a lot of people with not very much money who will bash the hell out of you.
They travel down to Manchester to do a VAT inspection. They've got a 2-hour train ride. They get here and they're, is it 3 hours? I don't even know. And then they'll do a 2-hour meeting and then they've got to get back on the train at 2 o'clock. You don't run a fucking business like that.
Well, it's nonsense. Anyway, it's things like that. And I can get frustrated in business about things like LTIPs.
What is an LTIP?
A long-term incentive plan dreamed up by the management usually, and with criteria which give them a reward, which are usually rubbish, and any idiot in a bad day could get to them. They'll almost say, if we keep up with inflation, you all get an extra £1 million.
Nowadays, we do what, share options? Is that this?
Well, no, these LTIPs are in the bigger companies. It's a way of them getting money.
Oh, you're talking about boards who are paid a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's so, I looked up ours. Ours is actually not bad, like highest to lowest ratio. I think ours is like 6 or something, or it may be,
But in my experience of those have been the management fixes them.
No, they fix something.
So people are there deciding their wages at a senior level and for their future wage and guarantee of money.
Yeah, and the non-execs aren't going to argue because they get more money if they get more money usually.
How do you fix that corruption?
You would need something from outside to come in, or the shareholders would, which the city, you see, can't fix it because the city want bigger numbers. It's such a deep corruption.
The suggestion, which I'm not sure you'll like, is that there should always be a senior representative of the staff on the board. And that stops stuff like that, to say, how much are you saying you're going to earn?
You've got to have an educated person. I mean, I've been to a lot of board meetings. There's not many people that are going to stand up in front of one of those.
You'd have to cure the city.
And say something.
You'd have to cure the city. That's where it starts.
Because they want it all to be.
Big number.
Because they get paid big numbers then. Everybody's pay in the city is going to be reluctant to,
I get $1 million.
The chairman gets that and he only makes $5 million. And I want over here, I'll have $5 million, please. It's something I don't know how you cure without a huge effort, but it's a rotten part of life.
One of the other ways is transparency, forcing firms to be.
But the big shareholders are all institutions. They just vote for the board, don't they? They're all their mates almost. It's really bad.
Protect the directors, but that protection of directors, Fred the Shed and these terrible examples of people just running the business into the ground and paid millions and millions of pounds to do so.
Yeah.
It's not proportional,
So you need something to stop it. I mean, the other thing I love, which I'm not criticising Diageo because they're not a bad company, but the bullshit is their annual report, I looked it up, is I think 216 pages.
Fucking hell.
There's no way anybody reads that rubbish. And I'd read one bit of it because when I was chairman of a quoted company, our biggest shareholder didn't even know what we did. And how many people have ever read, even in big investors, don't read the whole of a 260 page?
Nobody reads these reports.
No. And yet we're creating them and creating them and creating them and more, and we're all going to be compliant and we're all green and we're all going to have equal women. They're working very hard on getting to 50% female leads by 2030. I've seen that all over the place. Bet when we get to 2030, nobody will say we failed.
No.
But why do they have to have it as a target? Why don't they just say it's
window dressing?
It is complete toffee.
What do you think, sis?
What, on targets or on
these
just...
big
Well, we've done
reports
it.
and stuff?
Oh, yeah. I mean, no, yeah. Only the lawyers ever read half of this stuff. And no lawyer typically, not the same lawyer, reads all the way through.
I find there's this weird pattern of humanity, and especially in boards, I've seen it. I always know someone who's been on too many boards and not done any work. They turn up and they don't know what's going on because they haven't fucking got their head around anything, and they always want a report. Oh, give me a report. Oh, I want a report on this. I want a report on that. And so you get these people. So therefore, everyone's running around giving them reports. And it's a bit like that in the city, and it just gets worse and worse. Basically, your excuse for not having anything useful to say is, oh, I don't have the information. Give me more information. And then it's the similar to people all thought they wanted when, everything's gone digital and they were like, oh, I want a dashboard with all my matrices and all the numbers on it and da-da-da-da. No one fucking looks at it. Most business people who are any good at running businesses care about 3 or 4 numbers. I know you do in the firm. It's like, I care about this, I care about that, I care about that. I mean, the rest is noise. And that's the truth. Is you really, there's just a lot of what is it?
Hot air,
stuff shirts, effectively.
Yeah, and printed paper, as Papa say.
Yeah.
And then the other bullshit is the Institute of Chartered Accountants holding themselves out to be our lovely friend. They're no more a friend than fly. They're a regulator. That's what their constitution makes them. But they'll pretend they're lovely to us and we can train you and look after you and come to us whenever you want anything.
Yeah, it's a really messed up thing how our regulation has become like that.
Yeah.
How should it
Well, the
be?
regulator is there to really police. I mean, there's massive debates. Of course, I'm sure they're in the midst of commissioning yet another report from some expensive consultancy business.
Probably
about
why I
what
try to
their
fill the
realm
black
should
hole.
be, but in theory, they began as
Standards
policing
regulator. They were
yeah.
built to say we want to set high standards of professional ability.
And they should discipline
ethics.
if not that they do.
And ethics. That's what we should do. What do they become? This sort of fat cat, we're all things to all men, pay us lots of money. Because the bureaucracy grows. We ought to say the Institute of Chartered Accountants, the regulator can't have more than 25 people. It can hire another 25 to do inspections, or it has 100 and that does all the inspections.
I like that idea.
But it has nothing to do with looking after the members. The members could have a different club if they want to join it. They don't have to join it as long as they've joined the regulator. But we have to join, and then we pay for all this. And then they come along and want to fine you and charge you lots of money and try and destroy people. Fine, if that's what they say they are. But in the same breath, they'll be saying, oh, wouldn't you like to use this? And wouldn't you like to do this? And
Do you think they're worse than the Law Society, or?
no, I think they're probably all as bad.
Don't we need to have your point is, we need
Separate the function.
Okay.
And limit the size of the regulator. So you're a regulator. All you've got to do is go out there and check that we're doing the job properly.
Audit.
And discipline people. What they could do.
Stop trying to be friend. It's because it's a club that we have to pay money to.
Yeah.
So they set out their stall and say, and there's
they've
competitors,
now
competitive
included-
clubs. So it's come join my club,
Well, they've in marketing and branding and all of that stuff's now important.
Yeah.
And they've got themselves
they're
involved
there
in
as-
the whole sort of, valued audit and all this noise. But they're just not pleasant, because they don't make it clear that really you can't trust them. You can't have an off-the-record chat with them, as you'll get locked up.
Yeah.
Do you know?
And it almost, the type of person who joins an regulator like that is almost, you've got to enjoy almost, it's like, I don't want to say it, but people who join the police, it's kind of that like, oh, I want to go be,
And I want to exercise my power.
I want power.
You got it.
And I was at school, everyone treated me like shit and no one cared about me. So I'm going to go, and then I'll go, because you get it from HMRC, people with a chip on their shoulder.
Oh, do. Absolutely.
Don't like rich people.
Yeah.
I'm
here to redistribute wealth. It's been said to me, why are you arguing your client can afford it?
Fuck you. What's that got to do with
What's it got to do with the British exchange?
It's a set of rules.
Yeah.
And
you're supposed to be a disinterested civil servant doing your job properly. To not sitting there thinking, how can I screw somebody because they're rich?
But it's about the politics now. I found the whole Richie Sunak that his wife had claimed remittance. That it was people absolutely hate him for it, and how the press whipped it up. Now there isn't an advisor in the country who wouldn't have told his wife to claim remittance. If there is, they need to be fired, and they would be negligent. In my view, you would be a negligent professional advisor to not tell his wife and to try and explain to someone this woman is a foreigner.
But this comes in the press. There are a lot to answer for what goes on. Yeah. They wind all these issues up like crazy every day because they're desperate to sell newspapers because they're in a dying industry. It's going to get worse, not better.
I hadn't thought of it like that. That they become more and more
desperate.
And actually, things like the FT, to be fair to them, probably are one of the few things that are all right. And so many clients say to me, who live internationally, I only read the FT. It's the only newspaper I look at. And I think FT is one of the few things that's probably making enough money because it's got a valuable enough position.
Yeah. Charges enough.
It's expensive. I mean, I get it delivered. It ain't cheap,
But it is a problem. So there's these sort of issues when you say business without bullshit. They're bullshit, some of these things.
We're rebellious. You brought us up to be rebellious, but rebellious is almost the wrong word. It's almost like
bend rule.
Yeah.
To the border. Yeah. Don't cross it.
Well, I mean, I would agree with, and it's almost the lateral thinking. But there's a funny contradiction in you that you're a person of such integrity, and yet you're someone who is very rebellious. Now, that all sort of then stems back to what does the law say? There is a framework of rules on which this country is built, and that's truth. And then on top of it is a lot of bullshit and noise and politics and prejudice and crap. And maybe underneath it, what it is you despise the sort of the prejudice, it's almost back to those Huguenot values, those Jewish values.
Well, it's the dishonesty, disingenuous.
That's how it fits together. The integrity is that it's disingenuous.
Yeah, the revenue can write bullshit in their manuals to frighten people to do what they want them to do, not what the law says.
God, I never forget a guy telling me on the phone, a VAT guy, telling me it's illegal. And I'm like, I knew my law, and I was like, that is not illegal. And you have these arguments on the phone. He's like, and he was from the Special Fraud Investigation Unit or something. And then he said another thing, and I was like, look, sorry, I'm going to have to stop you here. You are lying. You are not correct, and you better go look it up. And I said, I'm going to raise a complaint and I had to get rid of him. If I didn't know what I was talking about, I would have been terrified.
Yeah.
He's talking about sending me people to prison kind of thing. You've committed fraud, It's like,
Well, it's like the last time I've had hardly any direct contact with the revenue. I always write to them and make them write back. But when we did have a couple of them in, it was really interesting that you had to be brave with them because I think I told you they held up the guy's accounts and said, are these correct? I said, we didn't come here to talk about that. I'm not going to look at them. And then they started charging the guy or using the European caution. And I said, get out of my office before they got halfway through. You've no right to be here. Get out. We agreed what the agenda was for this meeting. My client's here voluntarily. Get out of my building. And they were, oh, do you really mean that? I said, what do you think? The guy said, get out. And then they said, well, can we stay? I said, if you stick to the agenda.
Why?
And they were all right after that.
What do you think? You always talk about Big Brother in terms of how I think maybe this is this based on the value that you believe in you believe in privacy of the individual almost?
I don't trust government, so I could put anything out there and get their hands on. They're using it all the time. I'm not paranoid about it.
Why don't you trust government? What did they do to you that what was it that means you can't trust? I mean, governments are badly run giant
I was just
machines.
brought up that way. Well, I suppose it goes back. It's Louis XIV.
Yeah, but the Huguenots
revokes the law
and says, right, fuck them, we're going to get them.
Yeah.
He did a Hitler.
Yeah.
Glad we got Hitler.
So deep down,
I've
never gone further rationalising, except I don't trust them. I've met the ones that are devious. You've met them like you're saying, the guys that you're lying to me.
Yeah, yeah.
So why would I trust them? I'll trust somebody the trust is another issue, isn't it? When do you trust people? I was brought up not to trust people until you really know them. And that takes a long time. You need to go through things with them.
If you're talking about trust to the level of, you're talking about true trust. It's sort of like...
Well, I think I told you I wrecked a client who died recently. It was my oldest client, and I said to his wife, I trusted him. I don't say that about more than 2 or 3 people in my life. It was the sort of highest accolade as far as I was concerned I could give anybody.
Joe Hunt?
Yeah. I trusted him. She said he trusted you. I said, that's what it's about.
Oh, I almost made me cry. Yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't happen that often.
How many people do you trust? Who do you trust?
Oof.
Good question.
No, because either your grandfather or mum's grandfather used to hold up his hand and be like, if you can know, if
that was my father.
Die, knowing that many people
5 people
can trust with your life, you're a lucky man.
Yeah.
And that always stuck with me. I thought that was really random when I was little. As you grow up, you really realise what true friendship is, what true all of those things.
Could you say who any of those people on your hand are?
Oh, see, some would be family members. I never put it down, but literally depends what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question.
No, it doesn't depend. It's somebody you could do anything. You could tell them anything, give them money, lend to your best friend.
Of my very best friends, it's only probably 5,
And you'd be lucky if it's...
That's a lot.
Well, I do trust Pierre.
Yeah, we don't go through...
We don't need to.
Yeah, sorry. But, I mean, I'm curious with you whether there's, I wouldn't know with Juliet who do you really trust.
No. Anyway, another time.
Well, he obviously doesn't trust you and I, so we better get on. Love you, Jay.
So we've got 2 ones. We've got the spicy topic, or we've got a bit more about how we run a business. What do you want to do?
Do you want to do Oury Clark, Papa? Here.
Which is, well, if you've got anyone on your list you want to discuss.
Workflows, not too many
how do you run
lawyers. How do you run a legitimate business?
Well, I suppose we were having this conversation. It was helpful about ratios in the firm. And the reality is quite simple, isn't it, in business? You're not here to employ people, well, I'm not, to employ people and to end up making no profit while they enjoy themselves and have a nice salary and everything cared for and no worries. There's got to be a reward ratio.
You're talking about partnership here, really?
No, just...
No. Basic economics. You employ somebody.
Basic. You walk through a shop and somebody's sitting doing nothing. You're paying them. Are you mad?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it? You might be a typist, might be anybody, but what are you going to do about it? You've either got too many people or it's an aberration because something's happened and very unusual. You've got to do something about it. Otherwise, you're just bleeding. And also you learn, to me, that if staff aren't busy, they're discontented. If secretaries and people are really busy, they're no trouble at all because they come in and they head down, they get on with it because they like it because they're busy. They don't get bored during the day. They don't sit there filing their nails and wondering where the next job's coming from.
It's really important to busy. The old phrase, you want to get something done, give it to a busy person.
Yeah. But you must get your business busy. So I have sort of views like that, which is the third. I'm not here to...
The third is I guess our
a rule
business,
of thumb.
Could you apply it to all trades?
I think most which are in selling labour.
Professions.
You probably could do it in machining.
A third is to pay for the staff. A third is to pay...
Overhead. which may be machinery or maybe just light heat, but it's paying for your own internal accountant, your sales force, your
And the third
advertising, insurance, every damn thing. It's a lot. The premises, heat and light, machinery.
I find the premises one really interesting after COVID. That we obviously, a lot of people believe there is value in having a place of business and people working together and collaborating. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. But there's a huge cost to it. And so when I'm quoted fees all the time, by friends or whatever about, they'll do it for 100 quid over there, and I was like, well, if I was working from home, I could do it for 100 quid. But you're paying for this building. Well, why bother paying for the building? It's like, well, when it comes to doing a VAT registration, I see your point. Well, even a VAT registration could be complicated, but if it's just something simple, I could see your point a little bit, but that's not what you're buying.
I think it's very difficult to build a business if you did it in everybody in a silo.
Yeah, working on their own in little bubbles.
Yeah. I think it's really hard because you wouldn't really get to know them on Zoom all the time. Yeah, then you've got to find the next one.
What is the culture? There is no culture. I mean, there is and there isn't.
When you say there's no culture?
Well, sorry, a very modern concept, but what is it that is valuable at Oury Clark? It is the culture that you and others
that engender.
You walk in the place and there's a vibe.
Yeah.
And the people are good.
Yeah.
And they're, to be honest, fairly trustworthy
yeah.
within that. We're not talking about, can I trust them with my life? We're just talking about, straight.
Yeah.
And the culture, so a good example of why we have a good culture is when we get a bad egg, the culture is strong enough at the moment
to get rid.
And the culture recognizes it. It responds.
No.
People go, there's something wrong with this fucking person, and they're out. Now, you only need a couple of bad eggs, and then you have a rot, because then they get 10 people wound up. They go and tell everyone their salaries. And then you get a rot. I mean, I watched it happen on the third floor in Slough, not long ago, with someone who'll remain nameless, but you could probably guess, having bitch fights with another woman, and it just destroyed everything for a while. These two women fucking hated each other and making it about them. And it was horrible. It ruined the whole atmosphere on the floor for months,
Which is another rule. Get rid of the bad apples, isn't it?
Make them work from home, perhaps.
While you get rid of them. What else is there about it? I think you need a bank. And that's very difficult to get these days. But you used to need a bank because you wanted to be able to walk in and borrow money, which is becoming more and more tricky.
You need to be able to borrow money is maybe the starting place.
Yeah, which means you need a relationship with the bank.
Yeah, there's other places you can borrow. It has changed. But fundamentally, you're right. Banks are the only legally,
economically sensible place to go and get it normally, that is strong enough to lend you more or not blow you away if you have a slight troublesome time.
Do you think all businesses should borrow money? Because most in a way don't anymore. They might have an overdraft.
Yeah, well, I think an overdraft's quite a good thing because to me, you should run on a fully fluctuating overdraft.
Why?
Because then people have to collect their debts. If they see that you've got money lying around, it's psychologically much easier to say, oh, well, I won't collect that. So if we're sitting with somebody, which we are, with a great big debt that's been there for a long time, if that was their overdraft, the pressure on him would be much greater. People would say, we're paying the interest on this debt.
And you mentioned an interesting thing, which I obviously debate a lot with my wife as a GP, the medical profession, particularly doctors, rightly striking at the moment, absolutely terrible about money. And we were talking about this, about Britain and our relationship with money, which is very repressed. Accountants maybe have a more comfortable relationship than lawyers because we deal with it, but maybe, is that you shouldn't be embarrassed about invoicing and collecting money. And I mean, I would never describe you as someone who's money driven, even though you are. You know what I mean? It's like it's an uncomfortable truth. It's like Richard Oury is a great professional. It's not like Richard Oury likes earning money. That just sounds dirty.
But I do.
You do. I still remember you being in the larder munching nuts, as you generally were, saying, oh, you really like your job. And you're looking at me in that funny way and being like, it's all right. But, the money helps, and that's always the line to me. It's like, you work. It's a fucking job, and there's the attitude now is, oh, you must do what you love and you must love every day.
I've been lucky. I've enjoyed most of it, but it isn't lacking in stress and pain. But it's more about self-discipline then, of getting up and working the hours.
Would you say you love your job and you love what you do? Would you say, you're...
I don't love it. I enjoy it.
But you're frustrated now, no? History's repeating itself on some of the stuff now. The firm's going back around and...
Not really.
No?
So
what do you mean?
Well, I don't know what I mean.
You're frustrated. What's the history returning back?
No, look, it's always the thing, I'm saying to you about certain things, and you're a different generation. You have to do your thing. All I can do is sit there and sort of say, well, I wouldn't do that. But you don't feel, it's not my place to stop you doing it unless it's completely insane. And I've lost £1 million over it in the past or something, then I'd say to you, don't do it, whatever you do.
I guess a spicy sausage, a good example for me would be, you are, I guess you're paternal in your aspect of your employees, but your paternalism is, I provide you a secure job in a safe place. I don't treat you like shit. Be happy. That's a lot.
And you could get promoted if you want to.
And when you get into subjects of extra holiday, but that all just seems nonsense to you.
No, you're giving money away.
You're giving money away. But it's not a zero-sum game, that it's like...
To me, it's a pretty zero-sum game.
If you had...
Because we don't require them to sweat after hours. There's a culture which says, I'll give you all this because... And then you'll stay till 8 o'clock at night.
But you are certainly...
So you're not getting anything extra?
What, from them?
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't get it. I'm giving them what they're getting, and that's what I expect out of them. I'm not asking them. I don't like asking to work over at time or whatever.
But the curious thing for me, and we started discussing a part of me, for someone who goes to take a month off to recuperate, and you just went on holiday and came back a different person, is that for me, efficiency doesn't come from just grinding someone into the, I'm not saying we grind people into, but just saying, do your fucking job, shut up. People need context. They need to be involved. They need motivation. You're very motivated as a boss. You're a boss. Oh, I'm going here. If people aren't involved in that, a lot of people become very inefficient.
It's how can I put it? You're not wrong, Eddie, what you're saying, because it's a different world, but you have to bear in the world I came from, where there wasn't employment law. You did what you told and got on with it. If you didn't do what you told, you were out the door. There was no conversation about, we've got to perform with them or we've got to give them compensation. It was get your butt out of here. So, it was more.
Work was harder.
Yeah.
It was colder.
But you see, I do agree with the Germans. You start work at 9. They will be at their desk at 9 and not chatting. They will work till 1 o'clock or whatever the time is. Then they stop and have their break. And then they work till 5. They work less hours and produce more because they work that entire time. We have a different culture. I'm not saying we should have that, but you have to look and say somewhere there's a game in here. The Brits will turn up, have a cup of tea, wander around, have a chat to each other, just like in meetings, really, isn't it? There's this.
I could argue that we're quite a creative bunch. There's something a bit odd and creative about us.
We are known for our creativity.
We are. No, and there's something like the chatting and the sort of, we need time to get going.
Warm up.
If you told me, no, I have to, like with all, because you're under a lot of pressure. So I just but I find it, especially with the ADHD, I find it very hard to sort of go, right, vroom, but once I'm in, I'm in. But yeah, I need some fucking time. If my job is a bit tedious or whatever, I'll sort of, get going. So the Germans have a mentality.
That's probably I did it all the years at 7 o'clock doing the mail because we'd always laugh while we were doing it. So the time I'd finished, I was ready to go.
Yeah, it's my dear friend Trevor.
I'm not telling you to do them. I'm just explaining probably.
Yeah, that's your
reacting to what you're saying to me.
Talking and just getting going, isn't it?
Yeah, you're working, but you're not pushing your mind. You're just talking to your mates.
Because a very good example is, and you've done it, we've all done it, you do Zoom, as I've done, and I still do a lot of days, from 8 a.m. till 7 p.m. sometimes, with very little lunch. The feeling at the end of that is awful. It's awful. I can't think. I can't
see.
I'm angry. I'm really angry. I think that's the problem. I'm really angry, and because you're incredibly frustrated because there's been no breaks between the meetings. Your brain, you just feel. I wrote a list at 7:45 that's got 27 items on it. I've done none of my lists, and if one motherfucker rings me up one more time, every time I think I've got 10 minutes to phone because people put me on callback. So the moment my meeting ends, my phone rings.
You know, history repeats itself in totally different ways. I think I told you I had a secretary it was my father's secretary. Who was brilliant, could do 200 words a minute shorthand, type at 150 or 100 or something crazy. She used to win prizes for speed. But she used to come in before mobile phones and things, and she'd type up all these messages. And I'd come in, and she's at 5 o'clock, and she'd say, "Now let's go through them." By the time we'd gone through them, everybody had gone home. Or she'd do it in the morning, and I'd say, "I could have done 3 of those out of the 10, but you'd go through them all with me, and what am I going to do about it?" And it just is the same kind of. You came out angry and frustrated because I'd end up coming home at night, and Mary would give me a list of clients to phone. You know,
Oh, Jesus Christ!
you know, it was just crazy for a while.
I know, like my friends who don't do as much work as me, and some of them I care about very much. One of them's their 50th soon. He's been trying to get hold of me, and he's like, I'm really, he's getting upset with me almost, and I'm just like,
We're at full stretch.
The
other side of the coin is probably it's not a bad thing. As Juliet said, isn't it? You've lived. In the sense we haven't sat at half pace.
No.
I think we've been really fortunate to have a family business where we all work together and we've continued to build and evolve it.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this. You and me have got to know each other. I mean, I've got to know my dad as well, but
Well, I got to know my father. You have to remember that really well. I used to drive into work and things. I, knew him pretty well.
Papa Don, what's your long-term goal?
Oh, I'd live for another 10 years or so and reset my target. Get to 90 and think about it.
Oh, I like that.
You're like getting us involved in international work. You could be a leader in terms of leading people, but you're always trying to think ahead.
Oh, if you're talking about what I'd like the firm to do, I'd like it to find more avenues to make revenue. I saw something the other day I printed off and I'm going to bring to one of the meetings.
Keep diversity.
Because we haven't done the multidiscipline. We've done part of it.
What's the missing ones that you're thinking about?
They're going to be niche. I think they're going to be things like valuing. When we looked at shares, there was one that came in. What was it about? Sorry. I think it was on an email that came in. I thought, why am I talking to them? We should be doing it. Grants.
Yeah, grants. I've done a lot of work on that. It's an interesting one.
I'm not saying it should, but you do
really
wonder.
Tricky.
It's the usual problem of chicken and egg. You've got to build scale and you've got to build a team of writers.
But the American tax, we've got to do that.
We have to do that. We've got to find the American tax person.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is I won't be here, but it's more looking sideways and seeing that's a good business. I mean, we didn't realise US tax was as big a business as it was. There may be others out there.
And it's the same thing. It comes up in conversation. It's why do we do R&D? People ask for it. You're led a lot by your clients, aren't you? Someone's asking for it,
Well, theatre grants, we've got to go out and sell it at some point if we get doing it again.
Yeah, we should chat about that one.
So I think it's more just involve MDP more.
And where
I still love it when we get to the stage where we can have doctors and physios and whatever.
Well, I happen to know one. So where would you like to see the firm in 20 years, let's say?
I'd like to see the grandchildren in it.
Oh.
That
You're working on them, I noticed.
Yeah, but you've built it, that you've seen. I think you'll do it. I think you'll build it. But I think it would be lovely to see the grandchildren in it. To have the opportunity, not to be forced into it, but have the opportunity to earn a good living. We haven't spent, you're on the 3rd generation and you've just got there, in my mind, to the point where it's go. It's a really good business.
Yeah.
If I put it together, we're well into the top 50 accountants if you had the law run, and the law's just part of us. In size-wise, we're getting chunky.
I think the clients I think so many things about us is starting to be, as David would put it, best in class. And it's a bit like, sadly, we have to knock it on the head with some employees. I was discussing with this fascinating client yesterday who's a professional service business in a very different way, and not in law and accountancy, but he said the same. I said, the thing is, I have to explain to someone, we're not average, we're not good, we're excellent. And you need to be excellent. And that's why, well, I'm really sorry to tell you, you're just not up to mustard. I mean, we need some seriously high performing people. It's not okay.
Okay.
It's not okay to just, you're all right.
Well, he's obviously going to have a lot of passion in this business.
Yeah.
Well, definitely. So what's the biggest problem facing Oury Clark, Popper?
Biggest problem?
I reckon
Finding entrepreneurs.
Finding entrepreneurs.
Professional entrepreneurs. When I say that, people who are qualified accountants or lawyers don't want to be crazy entrepreneurs, but people can see outside the box and just don't want to be an auditor.
Do you think that we should allow people to run businesses on the side? We do.
We did do. The only advice I'd give you on that is that if somebody, say a partner, says, I want to run a business on the side, I'd say, first of all, demonstrate to me you've got enough money. If it goes wrong, you're not coming to us. You've capitalised it properly. You can afford to do it. It's easy to dream, but, have you got enough money? And in reserve if it goes pear-shaped. Because I don't need a partner going down the pan and then being sucked into a business.
Do you think we should train our people to be entrepreneurs, or we need to find people?
No, I think
nature?
you've got to look at them. I think it's, to me at the moment, we're not even sitting down and going through this stuff and say, which are the real stars and what are we going to do with them? Yeah. They might have only just joined.
Yeah.
But if they've been there 6 months, you need to analyse it.
Yeah.
To me, and just say, who's good?
Let's do it.
I think it is. Well, the thing is, it's not within the normal rules. Oh, well, so-and-so came before them and stuff. It's very American, and we're not that comfortable with it here. But you need it's not egalitarian. It's you're doing I can't remember what it's called, but you're judging people on how good they are, and you're saying, well, you're fucking good. They're not such a star. But the thing is, you don't want all stars.
No, you probably don't want to find more than one or two that you can say they're going to be good for the future. Really good. And we've got to make sure they stay and we give them more responsibility.
Because they eat it up.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Because one of the things we're stopping when you say there's a problem is, I'm worried isn't happening because we're all too busy, is that you've got people now who've been with us 5-6 years and I'm not sure that we're promoting them fast enough.
Yeah, I agreed with your comment the other day. We need to throw them in the deep end more. As we become more layered and bigger, there's a sort of more, we need to train them up. And when you're small,
but the audit department's trying to hang on to them, for instance, because they're good at doing audit. We don't want to lose them. If they're good at doing audit, but also got much more talent than that, we should be
leaving them.
What do you think about climate change?
I think it's a very horrible thing. I think, we are screwing this planet like no tomorrow.
You said to me once that you nature heals.
Well, farmers believe that, but I think nature will heal it if we leave it alone and stop making it worse. It can't heal while we're still making the wound bigger.
Yeah. And it's so sad for me that your generation grew up incredibly efficient. And, I was reading about Rag and Bone Man. The Rag and Bone Man was this huge discipline that would literally gather up bones and stuff and fabric and shit.
Yeah.
And then he'd have a boss and he'd take him to an old experienced Rag and Bone Man and he'd go and sell it off. But he'd earn 5 pence a day and, go around.
He'd have a horse's cart.
With a dirty bag that was usually
quite often they had a horse and cart.
And a horse and cart. And these sorts of things are very important because they're recycling on the deepest possible. You see it in India, they go through the rubbish, and they clean it up and everything's used in a way. And now it's sort of, we and you take us down to Gerrard's Cross and we'd have paper bags with the fruit and the veg and everything. And it's now like
plastic.
It's just plastic with plastic in it.
Crazy amount of plastic.
Oh, it's just.
I read in Diageo's report this morning because I thought I've got to I can't be rude about it without looking at it. A wonderful piece of information. It takes 4 litres of water to make 1 litre of plastic. Well, and where's that take me? But that's 4 litres of water probably being screwed up for a long time in some usage. But this was a big achievement. They got it down from 4.5 litres. But
it's down to 4, isn't it?
According to Diageo's annual report. But
my frustration is nobody knows what to do. And so we all bang on about doing something, and I just can't find that many clear bits of sense of what the fuck we should be doing. Because if there was stuff we could do, and they should be doing TV adverts, you know what I mean? It should just be on the billboards, like don't smoke.
They could do stuff that's politically unacceptable. All they got to do is build more.
Because we're customers and they can't tell us what to do, even
well,
though
there's a rioters, isn't it? I mean, they should just build nuclear power stations and get on with it.
That's the fear of nuclear.
Yeah, which is complete.
Desperate.
Germany's shutting them down.
Only France gets it. To be fair,
because you could get rid of the pollution in 5 minutes. It might take 10 years, but you said 10 years we've got enough nuclear power. We don't care.
If we wipe out society or most of it, they will look back and say Einstein gave them the solution that they needed. They dropped bombs and then they did a few nuclear power stations and fucked it up. So I'll move on.
No, I'm saying hello to Dee.
Oh, right. So my sister telling me, come on.
But the Japanese are going to start up again, aren't they? I think the Germans have just shut down the last work. They've got working ones they've shut down in Germany.
There's some really strange bits of German society, and you forget that they're not Britain, even though we've got that very Anglo-Saxon. But the Japan, that whole disaster that happened in Japan. Do you know the total deaths of actual from the nuclear rather than from the tsunami? It was 2 people died. And you take 2 people die in a coal mine every day.
Yeah, it's madness. It's health and safety, mate, gone bonkers.
9 or 10.
Are you prepared to tell us what your biggest fuck up has been?
It might have happened in your biggest troubles is obvious, but...
I'm not a fuck up.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because, you could equate your losses and then, I could say, why the hell did I let Andy go into beauticians or, cosmetic? That was a balls up, except, then I sell my conscience of how much money got thrown away by just saying he taught him out of a lot.
Taught me a lot, Pop. I'm sorry you spent so much money on that.
No, but it's education, isn't it? I look at you and think you wouldn't understand branding and advertising and packaging or whatever, all these issues that you sell to clients and talk to.
To give you a sense of my father, I don't think a lot of people would do this. You mortgaged your own home for £1 million and you basically stuck it into my stupid things. And I wasn't into doing cosmetics, but we got wrapped. We were in a stage of the firm when we were learning is the other piece.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, we learned a hell of a lot.
I think a very controversial thing I would ask, because I think it's a really tricky one for you emotionally, but I think it's an interesting one. We're having a deep conversation is the ability for us to multidiscipline was somewhat based on James, and his ability to dual qualify. And there's a sort of...
Well, the dream didn't come from there.
Yeah, true.
Because by 18, I wanted to do it with Peter Babington, who was a doctor mate. And I said, let's set up a building with doctors and surveyors. And
where did the dream come from then?
I just thought it was such a brilliant idea, put it all in one building that you didn't have to frig about going to 10 different places.
Oh, you were up and down Slough High
And
Street.
I used to laugh about it and say, when you have your heart attack, when I tell you what your tax bill is, we got a doctor next door.
That's a brilliant idea.
No, but it was a long time ago.
Well, we've got to do private medical. Is it just because we're scared of the regulators?
I don't know. Probably the doctors are scared of the regulators.
Well, friend would probably be up for it. But yeah, I think it makes so much sense to have a few doctors here.
Well, if you're believing in giving medical benefit, then what are we going to do? Yeah. Just set up a couple of surgeries.
What people value is exactly that, not being waited on hold, a small enough firm that they have leverage and they can turn up in the office, they can bang on the door or whatever, and then a fleet of services. People love a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
They're willing to accept not necessarily the best just because it's all in one place.
When you go to a private doctor, you don't want to be told you've got to go to 17 other doors around the country. You want to be able to say, give me my CT scan or my, other tests or whatever it is and give me an answer. Anyway.
No. I'm just. It's great. I'm just.
I'm trying to think whatever's.
What's the worst advice you've ever been given?
Oh, I don't even think about these, Chris.
What's the best advice you've ever been given?
I can't. Honestly. Well, best. No, I don't ever feel that.
Would you come close to the mic? What do you mean?
Best advice I've ever been given.
You give advice for a job. There were countless people. One you met at a funeral recently and made me laugh about. I've met all sorts of your clients over my long career now who will say, your dad gave me an absolutely brilliant piece of advice. And I say, well, don't expect the same from me.
No, but it's tricky. It's just like the worst or best. I'd have to really think about that because
it's interesting.
You don't get a lot of advice because I worked on my own most of the time.
Your dad would have given you some good advice.
Oh yeah, but that's if you're talking about that, probably my dad, because of don't be neither a borrower nor a lender be, and work hard and all these sort of statements he used to make or things he'd come out with. So there was very much that.
Don't you find fascinating the oral tradition as we sit here? That it's probably been passed all the way from his great-great-grandfather told his son, you're a Huguenot, work hard, you're a Huguenot, work hard, you're a Huguenot. And what I always don't like is you follow the family name, which is only one fraction of the history. What about mum? What about that? But the father passes that knowledge and the mother passes her knowledge.
But all I can say about Desmond was that
That's our mother's father.
Yeah, he got on really well with my father because they'd both been effectively disinherited and left their origin. Desmond left Dublin to go and do medicine in London. He didn't inherit anything of the estate in Ireland.
It was a tremendously wealthy family.
Yeah. And father left Norwich and he was left nothing, basically. It all went to his sister. But they were
both elder sons. Yeah,
no, I think Desmond was the second son, I think. Father was the only son. He was the third child. But his mother went mad when he left Norwich.
Good move. He went to Slough.
It wasn't that bad a place in those days, actually. That's the strange part. It was much more genteel. Best shopping street outside London.
That's what I used to say. Fuck.
Golden Mile, it was called.
Slough Golden Mile.
Yeah.
Would you give any probably this one you don't want either, would you give any advice to your younger self?
Oh, don't start a business when you haven't got enough money.
Okay. You did that?
I started the wine business. And
you didn't have enough money. But you know what?
And I started it in a depression. I should have walked away. That's probably, the thing I probably got wrong.
It's funny then when we started.
But I felt I was letting somebody down. We'd agreed to do it, and then the crash came. And I should have pulled the minute the crash came. Because it was one of the biggest recessions on the 1st of January 1974 when it went bonkers. We'd had the war, the Israeli war, and everything went crazy. And I should have just walked away and said, we're not starting this business. Because to start a business, it's like starting it just after Lehman's in finance. Whatever you do, you've got a problem.
There's an argument sometimes, though, that the best time to start is at the bottom, isn't it?
But it hadn't got to the bottom. It was just started to dive to the bottom.
Yeah.
And, and don't get, understand. I learned the difference between, I think I've told you lots of times, marketing man and a salesman. I got a marketing man who was absolutely right about what was going to happen, but couldn't sell a rabbit, gave it away. Couldn't face up and say, I need this profit margin, give it to Waitrose because it would give exposure to the brand, great. Trouble was we weren't making any money. So, I learned a few lessons early. It was good. And some of these disasters actually are the best thing. It's given me a love of wine and, I've enjoyed travelling to wine districts and whatever. And I learned the difference between a marketing man and a salesman, and I'll never make that mistake again.
I think I would add, don't underestimate how much it costs to build a brand and a business. Because I remember starting the cosmetic bit. How much does it cost? And it's like, we'll get to profitability after 150 grand. Now, theoretically, 150 grand is enough to buy some stock and start a business. But no, we should have known. We should have been wise enough to know to build a cosmetic brand. You need money. Not a lifestyle business. You want to build a brand, you fucking need some serious cash.
Yeah. But it's worked out for the best. in some ways, because you could have had that cash, but you wouldn't have known half you know.
I learned a lot about VAT particularly, but no, about everything. I still remember the phone call when they said these cosmetics, this creams arrived at the border and we won't let it through until the vet gets here. You need to send a vet. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Send a vet? Why do I need to send a vet? Well, you have to have a vet for cream. And I was like, it's skincare cream. Oh, skincare cream? Is that for your face? You looked at it? And these little moments and you're like, but I didn't even know if you ship milk cream, you have to have a vet turn up. I assume he tests it for bacteria or something. Fuck knows. But all these moments.
Brucellosis.
Like, the other thing, they used to send faxes, so that it would arrive in the port, and the game they'd have is they'd send a fax off to say, your goods are here. We'll charge you £500 a day for storage until you do something about it. You miss a fax for a week, you've got a $3 grand bill. You got, logistics. Christ, you've got to be on the case. Do not trust logistics. It ain't getting there.
Popper, is there anything you want to cover?
Yeah, anything on your list? Final thoughts?
No, I think when you ask me in the future, it'd be lovely to see the firm go on. I don't know why I won't be here, what difference it make to me. But it would be very nice to think that, I suppose I believe in incremental effort. If you've got third generation, if you can make it the fourth one a happy place, they don't have to be all things, just they can join. It would be great. Because I think it takes a long time to build a business that's anybody good, particularly in the professions. Because if you look around, nearly all of them are 200 years old, the big boys.
There's some new ones that have grown very fast with a new young strategy of zero only, da-da-da-da, and they're actually snapping, they win business or, they give quotes. So I'm just like, fuck, I can't do that. But then I look them up. I can't see any grey hair. I see a bunch of, the oldest person's 40.
Yeah.
And that bothers me because I know and advise in professionals, like you said, it takes a long time. You need some old people around. You need
grey
all
hair.
sorts. You need grey hair. You need young. It takes that.
You want a mixture.
You need to give good advice, to run a complex business, to give professional advice. You've got a bunch of 30-year-olds telling you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure.
It probably won't last. Most of them don't. The patience is one thing. You look back and I can think, well, I remember the building societies being taken over and, it's all disappeared and basically gone. It's just a mess. And all the estate agents they took over, they decided to get into when they'd done all that, they said, well, marriage, mortgage to estate, and that's all gone wrong. And professional services have gone wrong several times. And the quoted lawyers aren't doing that well.
Well, my theory is I think James could be right that law gets smaller and smaller and smaller. But I think while we collect tax, two things in the world, death and taxes, while we collect taxes, you're going to need accountants. And while the government might want to get rid of us and just plug into everyone's system and take the data, that's a fight because the clients want, they might not think they want it. That's the fear I have. They might think, oh, I just plug it all into the government. It's all automatic. I'm happy. They could be very Scandinavian about it or very like, oh, everything's transparent and, they take the money they want and everything. But yeah, I think you need a arbitrage, don't you? Or what's the word?
I think, maybe that's an interesting point about the business that we've got to be careful of the danger of it being automated. Yeah. But the other side of the business is, which is a bit like the law, is employment. I think will still have people because it's people.
It's people.
And you could probably say the same about inheritance tax and things. It's people. What do you want? It's not really plug in because they'll have complex issues. Well, what happens if and I don't want to do this or do that? So I think there's a lot to play for as long as it's advice. But it's got to be, the numbers in most of the meetings I have are not very important. That's your profit. Okay, what are we going to do? What do we do next year?
Yeah.
A lot of what advice is about is what are you doing downstream? Make people think what they're going to do, what's the problems, where they're going. Because history is history. You can't change it once you've done the accounts. You can change the result.
I'm very interested to hear that because you're better with the numbers, but I would agree. It's like, most of my job isn't numbers. We need some numbers.
Yeah.
We need a couple of numbers. But if I walk into a meeting, I'm like, well, what's the profit? What are our losses brought forward? You know what I mean? What's flick through the P&L? Whatever, it's like.
Then what are you up to?
Yeah. And then what's the plan?
Well, I used to have clients complain because I'd say, what are you going to do in 5 and 10? Like you asked me, but it's good for people. What's your plan? It's when they sit opposite you and say, oh, I haven't got a plan.
Yeah.
A question for Juliet. Where would she like to see the film?
Oh, I don't know. I had to answer that before.
We did interview her like this. You said you wanted to see your kids in it, similar. Yeah. And you ask an interesting question when when you say, what is the value of it? You know, it's a bit like a broader family, isn't it? You know? And I think to work somewhere like with my sister, to work, you know, this is what I didn't get when I was a 20-year-old man, because you can't see it, because you've got so much testosterone flowing through you. You want to do your own fucking thing. You want to be your own man.
Yeah.
And that was a resentment that took me a long time to get rid of, because it was, I don't know who I would have been, because I wanted to just fucking work it out. But to your point, it took a long time. You know, all of these things they just flow over you when you're 22. You're like, yeah, whatever. It took a long time to build this place. And this place is something. They're standing on the shoulders of giants. And then I get to work with Juliet and I get to work with you. And now I'm 40 years old and I'm like, you know.
40 and some.
Oh, it's 44. You know, I had, it's in my raps, you know, I never wanted to be an accountant, you know, I just wanted to be counted on. And then there's a line, you know, about my sis bobbing in, you know, and I just think of you. I'm thinking of you when you bob into my office in a hilarious way, you know, and I'm like, you know, wow, you know, I'm at work and there's my sis. It's about people you trust.
When you said it about, when we were talking about my father, I got to know him, driving him to work, whatever, and it was a different relationship. And I think I told you the funny story the first time I drove him to Slough in his 6-cylinder Austin, which was nearly crashed a few times, come steaming along, and something pulled out on us or whatever. And he went, what the fucking hell? I'd never heard him use the word. And I thought, oh, we went to the same school.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's hilarious, because it was suddenly this whole world, because he never swore in front of a woman.
I imagine him, I remember him was quite serious. You have a tremendous sense of humour, did he?
Dad was always thought to be quite serious. Yeah, he could be quite serious.
Paul Bree said he was terrifying.
Yeah, people were frightened of him. Yeah, he could be quite.
But people are frightened of you know.
Yeah, well, you can do it when you don't. How can I put it? He was nice. He had a good sense of humour underneath it all, but he was brought up pretty austerely.
Tough.
Yeah, you know, it was pretty.
But you know, I mean, I know I always talk about it and it's a bit of a label now, but we're definitely all ADHD. And ADHD people appear rude because we think we're happy to chat personally when we're in a personal situation, but we're at fucking work. So it's like, you know, we don't do the whole, hey, how you doing? How was your holiday? I find it very irritating. I'm just like, oi, John, I need this. You know, it was David Rogers who started sending me, you need to fucking write something at the top of your emails, mate. You just email people like, get me this. It's really rude. And it upsets people. And I was just like, what? You know, and I like it when people do it to me. I don't mind it at all, you know.
But it's, you know, we're all different, aren't we? The pleasure of life that we are. If we were all the same, it'd be boring, wouldn't it? Can you imagine having...
But we work in a very special place, so we have to thank you, Papa.
Yeah. Well said, sis. It's a special place.
Thank Grandpa.
Juliet,
thank Grandpa.
You're a huge part of it, you know? And I think life is, you know, it's a complex thing, but they're organisms, aren't they? You know, we're family, you know? We can't all be around
Always
forever.
will be.
You know, this is part of our family that we have this place. You know that.
Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on.
Well, no, I think it's a really important, interesting conversation. I think it's a difficult conversation because of what we're going through right now. But you can only live as a family. Only the family survives, and the firm could survive. You know, it's part of us. You know, and it can be integral to how the family keeps itself alive. I mean, you look at whatever, there's all these families out there, these Italian families who've built businesses. The business is part of the family, you know, and it's part of the infrastructure.
Yeah, it's a very good way of putting it there, because I don't really think of it in that way, but I do. Do you know what? I don't verbalise it to myself at all in that.
Well, I think that you wanted me to join the business, I would say, underneath it, because you're a big softie underneath it. You wanted to hang out with me. There's a lot of that. You know? And also you knew there was this good machine.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good place. Your dad built it. Why would you go work for some other bastard? This is our business, you know? And I still remember you being like, when I was defending one of the staff, you were like, who's got your back? They don't fucking have your back. I've got your back.
Yeah.
However it feels, I'm your dad. I'm your brother. I mean, we got each other's backs. And that's why it's important for the family to join the business, because it's like, Sam or Chloe or Lucy or we and that's our fear now is like how we don't want to control this place as a family. Absolutely. But we want to, we do. It's a sort of, we want it to evolve.
Yeah, we want to see the ethos continue, and I don't believe it will continue if you just get a lot of outsiders in. It'll just become a firm. I think, it's important we try and get the sort of the ethos of Huguenism or whatever it is that is
continuing.
But your
not
DNA
stopping.
is in the business, Juliet. Your DNA is in this business. My DNA is in this business. None of us know how long we're going to be, but you carry on building on top of that. It's just really hard to explain to young people, including me. It's really, really hard to come up with a way to explain it.
Well, I think one thing we didn't say, I think I was brought up to be self-employed. And that's probably had a big influence on what I was doing to you guys. I was absolutely told not to go and work for anybody.
For me, interestingly...
And now everybody is encouraged to.
Yeah, I was told no. I mean, partly because Father wanted me to be his pension, as he put it, but no, you'll be self-employed. And you think the minute I was 22, just qualified, you're immediately a partner. Get on with it.
Maybe we need to explain that a bit better, because I didn't feel like I was self-employed. I felt I wanted to be self-employed. You brought me up to go and do my own thing, so I wanted to do my own thing. And now I was like, no, you need to go be under me, working here, employed, doing this thing that you're not interested in. I'm a creative person, like similar, and that's why you make a good accountant. It's like, that's the funny thing in life. It's like, if you're really square, boring accountant, you're not really a very good accountant. You're just good at being boring, which is important, and you need some of those people. But the irony is pushing someone into something they're not naturally the stereotype for makes you different.
That's probably what happened to me.
It is what happened to you, for sure. And it keeps happening to us, basically. Yeah. We keep taking non-lawyers, non-accountants and sticking them in the professions. And people are like, clients say, oh, you're a breath of fresh air to me.
Yeah. Because you aren't the sort of, how can I put it, the controlled audit mentality.
Oh, the pedantic, boring accountant.
Yeah.
They just.
Well, when we used to go to courses.
Line two. You used to go with line two.
You used to go to courses. Did you come to Blenheim a few times?
Yeah.
And what was it? A room full of grey-suited people, and it was like, I'm sure I didn't join this profession.
I remember the time you, me and James and Derek went for the audit. James, who never sits down, standing at the back through a 4-hour audit lecture or whatever it was. And us three passed out because we'd had too much red wine at lunch that we'd smuggled in. And then I sort of woke up at one point and I was like looking around and I was just like, oh my fucking God, everyone's a weirdo here. Everyone should be passed out. This is just, God. Well, on that bombshell, there you have it. That was Business Without Bullshit with Richard Oury and my sister Julia. I'm Andy Oury. There we go. You fucked it up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Papa.
much.
Thank you, Papa.
Thank you, Pop.